So there's this story in Genesis chapter 22 where God tests Abraham's faith. When the chapter opens, God talks to Abraham. He says, "Abraham, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom I know you love, and take him to the land of Moriah and sacrifice him there as a burnt offering to me." So Abraham is obedient. He wakes up the next morning and he packs up some donkeys, grabs a couple of men and his son, and they travel to this land. And gets there, it says after 3 days, Abraham sees the place where he's supposed to build the altar. So you can imagine the anguish, right? Packing up a donkey, not really telling Isaac what's happening, and getting to this place and then seeing the place where God is asking you to sacrifice his son. But again, he's obedient. He tells his other two guys, he says, "You guys wait here with the donkey. Me and Isaac are going to go up, we're going to worship, and then we'll return here." And so he loads up the wood on Isaac, and see, Isaac at this point doesn't know, but he's carrying the wood that in a few moments he'll be laying on. And Abraham has the knife and the fire, and they're walking up to the top of Mount Moriah. It says while they're walking, Isaac asked his father, he said, "Behold, I see the fire and I see the wood, but where is the lamb?" And Abraham simply responds, "God will provide the lamb for sacrifice." Again, you could just imagine as a father having to walk up. And see, Isaac is just more than a son. See, Isaac is the fulfillment of a promise to Abraham. He's a son he never thought he would have. He was 100 years old when God blessed him and Sarah with Isaac. And so you can imagine how special Isaac is to him, how important Isaac is to Abraham. And then here he is being obedient. That's how far his obedience has taken him, to the top of the mountain. And he builds this altar out of wood. And he binds his son, and he lays Isaac on the wood. And he takes the knife, and he raises it to slaughter his own son. And the angel of the Lord stops him. He says, "Abraham, don't lay a hand on him. I see now that you fear the Lord. I see now that you will withhold nothing from God." And Abraham looks down and he sees a ram that's caught in the thicket. And he grabs that ram and he sacrifices the ram in place of Isaac to God. There's so much we can learn from this story. But ultimately, it's all about Abraham's faith. Right? See, God looked at Abraham and says, "I know you love me, right? I know that you will serve me, but can I have it all?" And so he looks at Abraham's life and says, "What's so important to you?" And he tests his faith. And we see through Abraham's obedience and his faith, right, that he was willing to go to that length for God. So the question is, are you, believer? What in your life is so important that God would ask you to lay it on the altar of sacrifice for him? And are you willing to do it? See, it may not be your children. For a parent, it's easy to say, "Oh, it'd be my kids," but maybe it's a profession. Maybe it's some relationships or friends or hobbies. But what has become so important in your life that for God to make sure he's number one, he would ask you to remove that thing? I remember one time listening to my pastor to preach this passage, and I remember thinking, wow. And I was emotional, not because I think it would be hard, but because I didn't feel like I'd be ready to do it. I didn't feel like I'd be able to be as obedient as Abraham and say, "Yes, God, you can have it all." But that's what God requires. See, there's only one throne in your life, believer, and you can't put your profession on it and God be on the throne. You can't put your family on it and God be on the throne. You can't elevate yourself, put yourself on the throne where God is supposed to be. Ultimately, it has to be God. So I just encourage you, look at your life. Say, "God, what is so important to me that you would ask me to remove it?" And maybe the more important question is, am I willing